how you tie that in. And once you've got your product strategy, which is like, what is your positioning or what needs to be true in order for that business strategy to get executed on, the product roadmap is what you're going to deliver when. And the product goals is how you measure when you're getting there, when you're delivering it. So I'll run through that in a little bit more detail, but just this is the next diagram I just wanted to show. So when you're trying to define strategy or define product strategy, it needs to be, it's the layer below the company strategy. So if the company strategy is, we're going to win by doing X, I don't know if you can just drop in the chat, if you can share a high-level company strategy, otherwise I'll make one up on the fly. But pick a company strategy of like, what is it that you're planning on doing, or what is the uniqueness around how you are going to win? And then the product strategy is, what is unique about the things you need to deliver, the things you need to build, what needs to be true in order for that to happen, and what is the path of how you're going to deliver on that company strategy. So the company strategy is like the direction, the product strategy is the modes of like where you're trying to get to. The product strategy is the modes of transport. The product roadmap is then like what you'll deliver. So if you think of going on a journey, the mission is we need to discover new lands. The company strategy is we're going to head east or head west across the ocean following the trade winds. The product strategy is we're going to do it by building this type of boat that can keep this much amount of food. We estimate it's going to take about this long, and we'll need to have these characteristics of what the boat is. And the product roadmap is, first we're going to design the boat and we'll deliver it by this date, or maybe dates are not included, but we're going to design the boat, then we're going to get all the raw materials, then raise some funding, then deliver, like build the first boat, and then do a expeditionary mission. We're going to go out for 3 weeks and then turn around and come back. Then we're going to build a bigger boat and then go out for a bit further. And like, what are those things you're going to ship and how you deliver it? And all of those things that you ship, all the boats that you build along the product roadmap, are there to fulfill on the company's, on the product strategy, which is head east, like in boats, following the trade winds, using this amount of food, and this is how you'll iteratively learn. The company mission is still, like company strategy is still head west across the trade winds, and the mission is to discover new lands. All of those things are still true, regardless of the roadmap is just the timing or the order of, less about timing and more of the order of which you're going to do things as you get there. And the goals are going to be how we're going to measure when we're going to get there or not, or what that looks like. And so this is probably the tightest way of kind of tying all of those together that I've seen. And then whether you're delivering on the roadmap is measured by the goals. And if you're executing on the roadmap, then you know you're delivering on the strategy. And once you're delivering on the strategy, you then know you're delivering on the mission. So on the product strategy, company strategy, product mission. Effcetive, does that answer your question?
Utibe, does that answer the question? Please just put it in the chat box. Good evening, everyone. This is, I think, yes, positives. Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's group mentorship session. This is one of the products of People in Product, and I'm the moderator for today. My name is Ben. But we have in our midst our special, mentor who has always been here with us from time immemorial, our one and only Roger. Please, everyone, just drop an emoji for him. Thank you. Just recognize his presence. So before you people came, he was saying something to Utibe on something about a product strategy. That was like her own credit for being early to the mentorship session. She was here before 7, so she could ask her question. But nevertheless, we are going to start off, from the top. So you know the drill. If you have a question, you drop it in the chat box, or you raise your. If you go into the chat box now, you see the ops team have dropped like a Google Doc for you to, fill in your question, or you quickly just raise up your hand, and then with time, I'll call you one after the other, or Roger will just, pick it up from there. And please, if you have a question, just drop it. Don't interrupt our mentor as he's speaking or something like that. So
no,
he doesn't.
Please do. You're welcome to interrupt me.
Okay.
This is totally informal. If you have questions or you think I'm wrong, interrupt, engage. Don't sit quietly.
All right. So just so that we can be, formal, and so that everything can be coordinated well. So yeah, Roger, over to you.
Cool. Hey guys, this is super informal. I'm just here to help answer questions, help you get unstuck. So yeah, please feel free, interrupt me, ask questions, dive in, ask follow-on questions. If you have something to add, like I don't know everything. I'm also just kind of winging it. I give the best answers I can, but if you have a better answer or you can build on one of my answers, please engage. This is the whole point of these sessions. They're group mentorship. It's one that you can hear other people asking questions and add value, but it's also that you can get value from a bunch of different people. So please do engage. Don't be quiet. This is much more fun if it's not just me speaking to a screen full of faces for an hour and a half. Cool. If you have questions, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Drop it. If you want to ask it anonymously, there is a little pile of shapes in the bottom right corner. There's Q&A, anonymous Q&A, throw it in there. Otherwise, drop it in the chat, but feel free to engage. Somebody had their hand up. Bukunmi.
Yeah, so we have Bukumi. You can just, unmute yourself and just ask a question. Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Good evening, Roger.
Hi.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Samuel. You can address me as that. And first off, I want to say a great job keeping the community together. I'm a product manager in Nigeria here, and I work for Zosa, which is a company that uses technology to leverage the interconnection of farmers all across the country and also beyond. Essentially, we cover the most parts of Africa. So, given that it's in the agricultural space, one of the observations I've made when it comes to the projections of product management is that there are much more activities in the fintech industry. I could be wrong, but it's something I've observed. So, with someone that doesn't have as much technical background and should I say, basic knowledge of the industry, how do you propose I go about making the switch? And is there like a timeline that I might have in mind? I know the last part might be more of a personal question, but I just want to get your thoughts on that, given the fact that you have so much experience in the industry.
Sure. What is your current title, or what is your historically? Have you been a project manager or a ops manager or?
Product manager. Essentially, what I do is to lead the. I don't know if the last part that I'm about to explain is essential. Should I go on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so essentially what I do is to lead the product development in the organization of the web application and the mobile application as well. Okay. And then more like cross-reference with the design team, the sales team, and also the customer success team as well. So that way I get to know exactly how the customers feel about the feature we have built, and then also taking feature requests from basically everyone on the team, including the CEO.
Cool. So there's a couple of ways I can answer this. Let me start with what is different about product management compared to kind of what you'll be doing. There's a guy called Marty Kagan who wrote, who's done a lot. He's written just recently a third book but he's got a really great article on product management theater. I'll just find the link for you. So I'd highly recommend you give that a read. I'm gonna try and summarize basically what he says here far better. So I'll throw the link in the chat. But basically, there's two different types of product teams. You get effectively project managers and feature teams, and a project manager is just there to coordinate everybody and deliver what is kind of needed, get some feedback, but mostly just focusing on getting things through the pipes. When you look at, well, I'm all of a sudden very big. So and then you get product managers, and so product manager in the traditional sense, in the ideal sense, is far more driven by a strategic role of someone thinking strategically about like deciding what to build is the biggest distinguishing factor. So a real product manager, or what Marty Kagan calls an empowered product manager, is somebody who is thinking, who has the authority to decide what they're going to build, to run some experiments, to learn, to iterate, and to change the scope, not just of how features are built or delivered, but change fundamentally what you're actually delivering on. And so that's kind of his distinction of that. And I think that's probably the truest. And I think, like in its truest sense, that's what product management, the difference between product management and project management is. And I think that currently what you've been doing, just by the way you talk about it, you collect feature requests, you feed that, you check how things are performing, but it doesn't sound like you didn't talk at all about strategic decision making, identifying gaps in the markets, moving into new, like, blue water oceans, like that sort of stuff. Like, you're not sort of ideating and finding new gaps. You're really just delivering on what the features and needs, and somebody else is making the decisions of what to get built and where the priority lies. And so that's what I would call a feature team product manager, or effectively you're a project manager. But the reality is most product management across Africa is still that. There are in order to be in an empowered product team, or to be like that true sense of product manager, you need very strong leadership buy-in. You need very strong understanding of the value of why those types of approaches and that thinking is actually effective in the first place. And the reality is most of African leaders and the people running businesses just haven't gotten successful off that kind of thinking. So it's unlikely for them to embrace that kind of thinking now. So that's basically a very long way of saying what you're doing now is probably very similar to anything you would do in most fintech companies. Having said that, there are absolutely exceptions. Paystack, I think, is a great example. The product managers really do build interesting stuff there. It's guys like PiggyVest, Pocket App, those sorts of companies. And when you say them, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, they think differently about product and their products feel different. That's typically because they're running on a completely different operating system of how they deliver that. So that's like the one thing I would say is, like, even coming from where you're coming, sounds like you're doing a bit more project management versus product management. I think typically the fintech space is slightly more faster moving, and so they're adopting newer trends and mentalities and operating platforms and ways of delivering value. And so I would say that you're less likely to find a truly product-led organization in agtech. And I've worked in, we invested in a whole bunch of agtech stuff across the continent. I can tell you most of them are not. And if they are, they're very hardware focused, not focused on like real innovations beyond that, specifically not at the web layer. Most of them are just slapping insurance over a marketplace. And so, I think that's the thing. So don't feel too much imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people are still trying to work that out. I think a lot of the skills that you've done will transfer over. What I would challenge you, and what I would challenge anybody who feels like that you're stuck in a feature team, and there's a really great Lenny's podcast where Marty Kagan talks about this and a whole bunch of stuff around it, is to and if anyone can find the link or has the link, feel free to throw it in the chat. But and he really talks about, like, what can you do if you feel like you're stuck in a feature team? What are the actions and the things you can change about the way in which you operate that you can help you deliver in a more strategic, in a more sort of influential way? And so that's kind of the biggest shift. But having said that, product management is such a broad base. So anyone looking at doing a transition or getting into stuff, like, if the company is very forward thinking and it's much more fluid and working with like a lot more developers, and like the developers have a lot more autonomy, and you have cross-functional teams executing value in certain ways, that will probably take a longer time for you to adjust to. But I think there is probably 10% of fintechs at best that are operating like that. The rest of them will be operating exactly the same way you are. It'll just be feature delivery teams. There'll be an ogre at the top making decisions as to what gets built, and everybody else is just running around executing on it and trying to make it as good as possible. And that's really what project management's all around. So I think like the titles are a little bit wonky, and I think Africa's still catching up into what a really empowered product person is and how you actually deliver on that. But yeah, I think that's where the gap lies. So if you transfer, it'll be immediate. Could be a couple of weeks tops.
So it's not as if I have to learn new skills. I just have to know the industry in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the skills you've got are probably, like, if you've done any kind of web development, you understand the basic web delivery process. That's a really good foundational layer. I think the biggest mental shift that I would encourage you to make is just to think more around value delivery instead of feature delivery, of thinking, how do we deliver value? What value are we delivering? What is a strategy or an approach, or where are we leaving value on the table? Where is a market where we could deliver exponential value? And when you start talking in that kind of language, you start becoming more outcome focused instead of output focused. You start focusing more around value delivery, problem solving instead of solution shipping. And all of that kind of language and that mentality will lead you down a very, very different path and product.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you. That'll be it from me.
Cool. But yeah, to be honest, most people don't know what they're doing. So I don't feel everyone gets imposter syndrome.
So you're saying now that project management and product management in Nigeria is more like being, in a sense, on the same level, because, like you said, most companies are more in tune with feature development than satisfying their customers.
It's most of Africa. I'm in South Africa. I've worked in Kenya, Uganda. Like it's all over. It's most of Africa is still there. It's not just Nigeria, but yeah, it is in Nigeria too.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Cool. There was an anonymous question here. I've recently switched from B2C to B2B, and I'm kind of struggling with doing effective research. Any hack and advice on how to navigate this? It's hard. Yeah, B2B research is hard. Anonymous, I don't know if you can flesh out a little bit more, like what kind of research you're wanting to do. So there will be some nuances there. I'll try and give you a general answer. If you want something more specific, feel free to ask a follow-on question. But the best way, so I'm currently in a B2B space. The best feedback I get are twofold. The one is just to sit in on as many sales calls as possible. And here, what I'm listening for is what questions do they ask? What are their concerns? What are their process? I try and sit in on technical demos. I try and sit in on like as many of those comms, asked to be CC'd or BCC'd into all customer communication, just to see what questions they're asking. Where do they get stuck? Like, where do they actually see the value in the business? Like, who does it need to go through as you in the approval process? Like, does it need to go to compliance? Does it go to finance? Like, what stage does it go where? Like, what are those people actually signing off on? Chat to your sales team about that. And sometimes if you're joining those calls, you can actually jump in and ask one or two questions and slip some customer research into that as well. I typically find trying to approach customers directly is very, very difficult. Like specifically get feedback on your existing products, so that sort of stuff. If you have customer success teams, sit in on the customer success calls. So sit in four sales or customer success calls a week for the next 6 months, and you'll probably get a lot of information of different things coming through. Looking at like integrations, like where do people get stuck? What are the questions that come through? Look at the analytics in your docs, see where people are spending the most time. How can you improve those sorts of things? Looking at getting that kind of insight. And then the second, so the first is like sitting in sales teams and customer success teams meetings. The second one I found is like reaching out to product people on those teams, asking for research around, hey, I've got this new feature that we're thinking of building. Like we've got a couple of things of how we might solve fraud, or we're looking at like radically moving into this new space. Like, can I have a chat with you? Can we book 20 minutes or half an hour to just chat and soundboard to get some discovery of what it is? And a lot of PMs are like, if there's something new and exciting, specifically it might be interesting for their business, they'll very often take that call. So kind of chatting about new features and then slipping in a couple of existing like features on another topic. Hey, while I've got you, can I just ask you one or two questions around this and kind of keep it going? Once you've got rapport going, it's easier to ask some more follow-on questions. But yeah, either asking future product questions like, hey, we're thinking of launching this, I'd love to soundboard it off you, or sitting in on sales calls and listening to questions is probably the best source of that kind of research. I don't know if you're doing like market research or market sizing research. That's like a totally different thing. I don't quite know how to answer that question. So let me know if that didn't answer it. Anyone else have like a tip on B2B research? Something I can learn? Don't be shy. Cool. If no one's got anything to add, another question. Anyone got, what are you struggling with? What's the challenge you ran into today? Or we can just sit quietly for 40 minutes. Anyone? Just start randomly calling out names and asking what you're getting stuck with. Emery, you're here quite often. What do you normally get stuck with? What challenge are you overcoming at the moment? Safe space, guys. Safe space.
So I'm thinking maybe we turn it into the rapid fire question style I would have done during the podcast, and I just shoot you with some of those.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, go.
Okay. To introduce myself, my name is Toby, and to go ahead, I think some of the questions that have been on my mind recently, to give everyone the background. So Roger wrote this white paper on, I mean, it's not written and published yet, it's still more or less internal on in Africa. So there are a couple of things that he mentions on the call a lot of times. Number one that comes to mind is the organ-driven development style, where there's really no research per se, and we mostly just build what the organ from the top, what the boss says we should build, right? And they also talked about the cost of implementing things and the possible constraints and bottlenecks that exist in the system. Now, I would like to touch on that second one. Recently, I moved from working in a startup to working in a bank, right? And number one, the culture shock has been very insane. And at the same time, getting things done has been very What's your advice on how to navigate that culture shift in such a way that you don't come off as the overzealous, high energy person from the startup that's trying to then, what's the word now? Disorganize everything to disrupt. Yeah, that's the word. Disrupt everything to make things better.
Yeah, so firstly, let me caveat the answer. I've never worked at a bank. I've always worked in startups and small businesses and investors, and I think the biggest company I've worked for is like 60 people. So take my advice from where it comes. The biggest thing, the biggest realization I ever had about big companies is a big company got big because of one or two primary revenue streams. So that's how they've made all their money. And they've gotten to a couple of 1,000-person company, or a couple of hundred or whatever that is, by preserving and building defenses around that primary revenue stream. And so if you think of it like an organization, an organism, all of those layers that it builds around there, all of the things that make corporates shit, i.e. bureaucracy, politics, compliance, risk, branding, like just the general culture around like risk aversion, those are all there because they're protective layers that protect the organism from maintaining its primary revenue stream. And it protects the entire system to keep running. And so what happens is a disruption is seen as a virus, or it's seen as a threat to that primary revenue stream. It's seen as a threat to the status quo. And any kind of upsetting of the status quo, the immune system kicks in, and the immune systems are every single system that is built in that organization other than that primary revenue stream. So it will be the politics, it'll be the fiefdoms, divisions, it'll be the culture, it'll be the risk aversion, it'll be risk compliance, and like all of those things are there that will start attacking any kind of disruption. And so it's very difficult, and that's why corporates struggle to innovate. It's why they struggle to build and deliver new things, is because the entire system is built around risk aversion to the primary revenue stream. And anything that's seen as too different is just seen as too foreign. And so it's really difficult to do that, to actually be truly innovative inside that space. So that's kind of where I think it's better to, like, firstly, you need to try and get buy-in, and you need to get buy-in from your direct manager, and you need to get buy-in from other leaders or other influential people across the organization. Having said that, in every corporate I've ever dealt with and worked with, you kind of deal with, like, you're banging on doors until you find one person, and that person just can do anything, and they unlock anything, and they bypass rules, and they'll move through the organization with ease. Now, they're working with the organization. They're not working against it. They're not like breaking rules. They're just bending it, and they know which the person in compliance is that is most likely to just give you the rubber stamp for this. And they know who in finance will approve this type of thing, or where in the budget line items you can get it. So if you want to be effective in a large organization, rather try and be one of those people. Don't be disruptive. Don't try and break things. Don't go against the grain, but find ways to just be better at swimming with the tide than anybody else. So yeah, that's kind of the thinking that has helped me navigate as an external party, navigate and sell into corporates and find our way through corporates to get things delivered and effectively executed inside that. But it's very difficult to do disruption or innovation as just an employee in an organization. It's almost better to just do your day job and do some fun stuff on the side.
Thank you very much, Rita. So, I mean, it sounds like something that would involve a lot of emotional intelligence, right? To be able to navigate the different stakeholders, because this is now like a PhD in stakeholder management on a practical level. Because then I find that I have to be involved in managing stakeholders that are not even directly related to my own thematic area or to the products that I'm working on. Just because they have influence in a specific area, then one has to find a way to manage those kind of people. And now that leads me to my second question on how product managers can balance their personality alongside the demands of the job. I find that as a product manager, it looks like you tend to be more successful as a product manager when you're extroverted, right? And you know how to meander and navigate some of this social systems and social dynamics. My question is, for people that are not really high up the extroverted scale, how would you advise them navigate this kind of system that includes stakeholder management, managing difficult people, managing upwards, managing downwards? What's your advice on finding a balance for excellence despite this constraint?
Yeah, so the first thing I would do is change the language. Instead of calling it managing stakeholders, call it building relationships. Introverts are great at building relationships. They can build really strong relationships, far more stronger, far more meaningful relationships than extroverts. Extroverts can build many light relationships, but introverts can build really deep, really strong, meaningful relationships. And so, like, shift the language away from, oh, these are people I need to manage, this is admin I need to do, to, hey, for me to be successful, I need to have strong relationships across this organization. In order to do that, I need to identify some key people, I need to add value to them, I need to be open and communicative with them, I need to empower them to make decisions about what's going on, I need to be a source of information for them. And by doing that, you're building that relationship, you're adding value to them, and they're going to help unlock doors for you. So when you turn it around like that, it's not like stakeholder management isn't this admin piece that you have to try and write effective emails. If you're genuinely trying to help people and keep other people in the loop with what's going on and adding value to them, because like information is a currency in large corporates, because information gets siloed and lost. If you can be the place that they keep hearing about new trends or shifts or opportunities, and you're the one that's constantly sharing updates and things with them, they're going to naturally gravitate towards that. They're going to naturally protect you. They're going to naturally lean in on you and lean on you and depend on you more for that. And then as they move up or as they see opportunities, they're going to make sure you're empowered and coming along with them so that they can keep getting that support. So it's less about like stakeholder management, and it's not an admin task. It's a fact of just building relationships. And to be effective in large organizations, you need to be good at building relationships. But introverts can build relationships just as well. They just build them slightly differently. Anyone in a corporate who has actually I haven't spent time in a corporate, I'm very clear about that. Anyone in a corporate got tips or advice on how to better navigate corporate politics as a PM or product manager?
In the corporate environment, a bank actually. So, hello, my name is Samuel. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Say you fit so, and now I've navigated that.
Hold on, Samuel. Go ahead, Samuel. Okay. Sorry. Hold on, Samuel Toby. Go ahead, Samuel.
In my experience, I'm a product designer. Sometimes I do a little bit of management myself. But some of the challenges I've worked with in my 6 years of experience in the corporate environment is there are PMs who feel more like glorified Scrum Master, so they don't have that relationship. So it's an order from how will I say, order from above. So whatever they want, they bring it to you. So it's as if they are strong-armed into delivering certain things. So you that's kind of in the development side, you have you know the limits of this project, you know the feasibility, and when you try to communicate with them, they are more about what the stakeholders want. Then that's a section of them. There are other sections who are learning on the job. A lot of them, you know, they were more like project managers, but yeah, they're trying to transition. So I feel instead of taking proper courses in product management, they bring the idea of project management, which is more about deadlines and yeah, they will look at the goal of the product, because I've been in scenarios where I ask them for the goal of this product and the outcomes, and they're like, no, we want to build for everybody, you know, no personas, no nothing and that. So I think my own way of managing it is, and that's why I've become a manager myself. I've read some of these things. I can't say I'm the best, but what I do is I try to share some things with them and be like, okay, let's break our outcomes and let's have this sort of things there. Then I'll tell them that sometimes based on what they ask me to do, I will ask them questions that is sent to the stakeholders or the directors, so that they understand that, okay, this thing we're trying to build is not feasible at this point in time. Why don't you go this angle? And many a times they find out that those questions are like smart questions, because they come back with positive feedbacks based on the question. So in my sense, I've tried to help the knowledge gap between the standard approach and what we get in our own ecosystem, because I'll tell you, a lot of them are just, it's just hard to deal with stakeholders. And yeah, so I think in the Nigerian space, there's a bit of stronghold on them that they must deliver on this project. So no proper scoping, no proper research, no communicating with customers. So they just want to deliver on deadlines. Everyone is under pressure. I feel that's one way you can help in the corporate environment, yeah, because what the stakeholders want, you got to deliver that stuff.
Yeah, the first version we call ogre-driven development, which is sort of like, I think in the West world, they call it the hippo, the highest paid person in the room. It's like the highest paid person opinion. That's basically what gets decided to build. Samuel, I know you asked a question about transitioning from ag tech earlier. Does it sound like you kind of on par, like feature teams versus empowered product teams?
So it's more or less like I'm a senior UX designer, more like in a managerial role. So I manage people. So the thing is, in the process of managing people, I've read a lot of UX books, and it's funny how some of our work are related, you know, discovering outcome. Only that the UX designers are more focused on the experience, the product managers are more focused on, you know, the goals, the success rate, the branding, all those other things that we make that product meet, you know, when you're comparing importance and satisfaction and all that. So in the way to transition, I learned some of the processes that they do, you know, just the minor ones, breaking down outcomes, understanding the customers, doing a little bit of research, understanding the markets, you know, all those market fits. So it's really just understanding them and delivering on what I do. And I think what I've learned in time is to manage sprints, timelines, you know, because there can be a lot of work to be done as a product manager. There is a lot of work, and they might be. So what I do is take that part away from them, especially when it comes to breaking down on outcomes and communicating the technical part. So most of the PMs, you know, now everyone is tech savvy. They're more business oriented. So that tech part I can explain because I have a good communication with developers. So that part has been able to bridge a lot of cooperation or collaboration. Yeah. So I think there are other things I need to learn in the product management space. Like I said, I only do my own part in, you know, managing outcomes. And
I mentioned Marty Kagan earlier, and the phrase he uses is that a true PM, not a feature delivery team, but a true product manager, empowered product manager, is focused on value and viability. So if you look at the desirability, feasibility, and viability, the PM is responsible for desirability and viability, and the engineering team is responsible for feasibility. And so that kind of, if you think of that split, it's around value, like being value focused, which is outcome focused naturally, value focused and viability focused. So how do we, in another world, I've used a language of how do you create value and how do you capture value? So how do you create it for the customer? How do you capture it for ourselves? And what actually gets built and the scope of what actually gets built, that's a delivery team, that's the engineering team responsibility, or engineering manager. So typically how you would look at that. So scoping what that is, and the product design is often the bridge between those, between the desirability down to the feasibility. But that's really the difference in thinking about what it looks like. So even when you're like managing Scrum and that sort of stuff, that's not really product management, that's really project management. And there's a large part of product management that is project management, but that's not the job. That's just the tasks. The real job is value and viability. It's around how you create value and how you capture value, and the big focus through that.
And this part you mentioned, I won't lie, this is a very big thing that is missing in the space, because really, I won't lie, in my past 6-7 years, it's been glorified Scrum Masters. Because you ask them, I'll give you an example. I worked with a team last year, and there was a product we built, and we worked 2 years, and I was confused of that product, why we're building that product, because it didn't seem to offer any value, but they built that product based off of feedback of one customer. So a customer demanded for that product, and we felt they're like merchants, and we felt, oh, let's build it for all. But the problem they failed to check is what was in the market. So in the market, when you compare the importance and satisfaction, WhatsApp was what these merchants were using. And WhatsApp was providing what they needed. Like, it was too competitive. When you talk about the satisfaction rate and the importance rate, WhatsApp was doing it for them. So my own question now is, why are we building this thing if we cannot even integrate WhatsApp into it or do something that, because we can't beat them? And we spent 2 years, a lot of resources building these products. It ended up not delivering value, and it leads to the company laying people off. Now, if you look at that example, a lot of engineers and designers were laid off due to the fact that some PMs did not check that value you talked about. So if you checked it and compared it, maybe check other merchants and say, if this thing were here, we would have figured out that no, it's not something we could work on something that could give us value and also gather income for us and maintain the company. So so that's really the challenge when you get into a company space that don't do that value proposition. How do you navigate? Because if I'm brought into a team, I will do what the PM wants to do. So how do you challenge that kind of scope, especially when your CEO, like I remember someone mentioning it, when we even told the CEO sometimes when we built this product about a year and we're telling this guy that we need to lay this off, it was like, we don't understand the market needs this. And it was based off his friend just telling him, build a product like this.
Yeah. So the easiest way that I've found in my career to challenge that is just to ask, how do we know? So when they say we should build this, you say, how do we know? Like, what data are we basing that on? And when it says, oh no, we've got feedback, or the founder's like, I just know, like, I've been in this industry for so long. It's like, the more conviction someone has, the easier it is to test. If someone feels really strongly that this is the clear answer, we should just go chat to 5 people and they'll all say that answer, right? Like, it'd be really easy to validate. And I think one of the things of like just going into the market, like you say, you worked on a product for 3 years, like at any point, you could have taken 1 hour, walked outside, chatted to 5 merchants, and none of them responded that. And you come back and go, hey, I just chatted to 5 people and none of them said that. Can I go chat to another 10? Like, go chat to another 10, take a morning off, go chat to 20 merchants, come back and say, I've just chatted to 20 merchants and none of them had this problem. This is what I did learn. That would like totally change the thing. So the way in which I found to try and counter that is just ask, like, how do we know? Like, what are we basing this on? And is that actually real data? And if not, can I just go find some data? Anyone across the team can go chat to 5 customers. Like, anyone can do it. There's no barrier. Go find 5 people who could be your customer and go talk to them. And you should, like, if the company has very strong convictions, like a strong conviction is very easy to test. It should be really obvious. You go out, you chat to 5 people, 4 to 5 of them say this, and you like, great, we're on the right track, we move forward. But like, you don't need to be an empowered product team. You can have an ogre as just telling you this is the feature we need to deliver. And if you like keep delivering it, but take 1 afternoon off a month and go chat to customers and get some real data, like go do a bit of market research and come back with some real stuff on like, this is what people are actually saying. If we tweak this feature or that feature, it would probably deliver their needs more. Like, let me go build a quick prototype or work with a designer and take it the next month. I'll take afternoon off with a designer and do some prototypes and run it past customers. Like, you don't need your CEO's approval to do that. He's probably not going to be great he's not going to be a great friend if you keep undermining him as like why he might be wrong. But and that's like a different conversation. Like we can think like how you deal with egos is a separate point. But like being able to verify something, anyone, like you don't need permission to do that. Just go do that. Like if you feel like you're doing the wrong thing, go chat to 5 customers. If you feel like you're making decisions without data, just go and do it. There's another framework. Kanal Shah is a Indian PM. He's done some. He's like an investor. He's pretty. He's got like 1 million followers in the Indian space. He's like quite prolific in that space. But he's got this cool framework called the Delta 4 framework. And so it's actually pretty simple. Where he says like rate the efficiency of the current solution on a scale of 1 to 10, and rate the efficiency of your solution on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you rate like existing taxis on like how efficient are existing taxis on a scale of 1 to 10, call it a 3. How efficient is something like an Uber or a Bolt in Nigeria? It's probably a 6, maybe a 7. And for him, if the difference between those two numbers is less than 4, or is 4 or less, then you're not innovative enough. You're not making a big enough difference. And so that's why Uber works in most other countries. It's like 7 or 8 versus 2 or 3. So there's a huge difference. I think in Nigeria or Kenya, the Ubers are slightly less efficient. They cancel on you more often. There's a whole bunch of other issues tied to it. So there's slightly less delta. So it's slightly less compelling. It's almost easier to get a private driver than it is to like have a guy that you just call up and he comes to pick you up instead of trying to use Uber or Bolt. So I think there's a tension there in this Delta 4 framework of whenever you're trying to build something, work out like how would we rate our solution on a scale, or how would our customers rate our solution on a scale of 1 to 10, and then how would our competitors, or whatever the current option is, on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you're not 4 points better, if there isn't a delta of 4 points between those two, then you're doing something wrong. You should go back to the thing. Yeah, I actually heard about it on the I was listening to the podcast this morning in the car. Yeah, that's where I got it from. But yeah, there's an article and a podcast where he chats to Lenny about it. Any other thoughts or questions, anyone? What you got? The anonymous question in B2B versus B2C, did I answer that to your satisfaction about research in B2B environments? Were you satisfied by the response?
Okay. Hi, Roger.
Yes.
Please, in the B2B, B2C question, can you like give like an example, just in case if the person is, still like here? Like, can you give an example of kind of research? Can you narrow it down just so the person can get more insights?
Yes, I kind of focused on qualitative research, which is typically one of the hardest things to get sort of people's opinion out of it. So, like I said, qualitative research, you're better off focusing on sales or support calls. So just immerse yourself with whoever's touching base, whoever's engaging with the customers. Go and shadow them. Go and sit in their meetings. Be CC'd into all of the emails, something like that. Just see what questions are getting asked and what data is coming through. On the other side of things is in chatting to people, reaching out to PMs or other people on the team to chat about like future products, and using that to kind of soundboard future products that could be valuable to them, and using that as a way to build relationship and rapport that can backload a whole bunch of other questions. If you're looking at like market research, like it depends massively on the type of market research. So that if you're looking for more quantitative type data, it's way more difficult to get. If you're working in like the banking sector, there's a fair bit of like reports and stuff that's out there around that. There's quite a lot that's published around financial records and licenses and those sorts of things. I think if you're looking for like market sizing, it's mostly just chatting to people in the industry, and that you're just going to network your way in to try and chat to people in the know. I think it's very difficult to get like on, if you want to like, I mean, like maybe something like lending, or like microfinance banks, like what kind of innovations are they happening, or like trying to do market sizing research on exactly how big each of them are. You might find some information on the bigger ones, but you're very unlikely to find on the smaller ones, and sort of further down split of like service providers or those sorts of things. It's going to be quite difficult to get. So you're just going to get there by chatting to different customers. If you can find information on one customer, you can often look at how many people, how many logos do they have on their website, what sort of sizing does that look like, and then proxy that across to other competitors. Do they have way more logos or way bigger companies or way smaller companies, and kind of do an approximate sizing from that. But the quantitative data is very, very difficult to get. Qualitative is slightly easier if you are selling to that and dealing in through the sales team. So that would typically be how I'd look at approaching those two.
All right, that's not Roger. The person said that your answer really helped them. So there's another question in the chat box from Unyedika.
How much knowledge of financial
yeah.
concepts should PMs have, and also share any resource you found helpful? I mean, if you're in finance, if you're in crypto, you should probably know a lot about crypto. If you're in payments, you should probably learn about payments. If you're in whatever, like, you should learn about the industry or the space that you're in. So I think how much financial knowledge should a PM have? Depends what sector you're in. I would say that you should try and read as much as possible about the sector, specific area that you're in. If you're in credit, or if you're in payments, or if you're in whatever, you need to try and become, if you're not already, you need to try and become an expert on that. And that would just be reading different customers developer docs, the APIs, how it works, look at the nuances of how they do it. There's quite a lot of open stuff out there with like Visa or MasterCard. They've got a whole bunch of reports. They've got tons of content on how their documents work. I've learned a bunch about our competitors just by reading their developer docs and white papers and going through all of their docs, how they talk about it, the language they use. And often, because I'm so close to the problem, I can see the subtlety in the language they use and infer how they're actually, how their solution is actually working, and the pros and cons. I can, because I write documents and docs that dances around certain words, I can see when they're dancing around words. So, like, just read your competitors' docs would be definitely the place I would start. If you haven't read your top 5 competitors' help docs from end to end, every single document in there, if you're not reading their white papers, if you're not subscribed to their newsletters, if you're not, like, why aren't you consuming all of this stuff? And that's going to help you get a lot more understanding of where you fit in the market, where your positioning is, where your differentiation is, all of that sort of thing. And see gaps of like, hey, we're kind of doing this, they're doing way better than us, and if we could actually get there, if we just change this 1 or 2 things, or reposition this, or we're doing the same thing, but they're calling it that, and it really seems to be resonating, we should probably look at changing our language. So a lot of it just comes down to that. But yeah, I would just do as much. You need to become an expert. If you really want to get good at what it is, you need to be a thought leader or an expert in the field or vertical that you're in, that you're delivering within. So, like, read whatever you can, read industry docs, read competitor docs, just go through that until you know more than anybody else. Okay, DK, did that answer your question?
Kind of. So the question was directed in a different way, but
Okay.
I really like your answer. I think it helps. Apologies, I joined late, so I feel like I've missed a lot already.
Not a problem. We're here every 2 weeks.
The question was more towards understanding the health of the business. So concepts like what's on the balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, things like that, and how it ties to your product's impact into the general business's health. So how much of that knowledge PMs have, considering that we're managing probably what should be generating revenue for the business and sustaining its growth. Yeah, absolutely. So if a PM's primary role is value and viability, or desirability and viability, if you will, like understanding that viability, understanding the basic financial terms of how, like, what goes into, like, what is COGS, what is CAC, what is LTV, what are gross margins, what are unit economics, like, how does that work? Like, getting an understanding of those core concepts is definitely something I'd recommend. Like, sitting down with one of your finance people and asking them to run through the finances, if there's a certain amount they can show you or can't. I don't know where that confidentiality is or where your relationships lie, but get somebody with that experience to just explain your company's thing. So maybe ask your finance team, maybe in the middle of the month and not around payroll or around like tax dates or anything like that, but just say, hey, can I sit for an hour and you chat me through how finance looks at the profitability and unit economics of this particular product line, or the costs that go into the dev team. Can you just run me through how you think about it, how you categorize them, and
I mean, most of your finance people are going to have half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour to sit and run you through that. Yeah, I would definitely do. There's going to be, in that conversation, there's going to be a bunch of terms you don't understand. You can definitely ask them what they are, but I would just write them all down as well. Like there's quite a lot. I mean, there's so much information online around like cash flow, balance sheets, like unit economics, those sorts of things. There's tons of YouTube videos. Like, so once you know what the terms are, go and research the rabbit hole of just like define this term, or what does this mean, or how do you calculate this, and you'll come up with all those answers. I think the hardest part is the part where you don't know what you don't know. So when there's terms and language that you don't know, I've just thrown out a whole bunch of jargon. Is there anyone on the call that wants me to unpack one of those concepts? Anything that you're stuck on while we're here? But yeah, otherwise, Onyedika, I would just find out what, like, how the business is thinking about it. It's like, it's always easiest to start at home. So start with how your current company thinks about unit economics or margins or loss or churn or default rates or whatever those, like what is the language, what are the KPIs that the finance team tracks, and how are they currently doing, and what are the inputs that go into that, and start with that, because that's going to be the context you're going to have the closest to.
All right, thanks. As always, I'm always anticipating like links that you send or resources that kind of reach.
I'm not really a finance or definitions guy.
Yeah, I'll just probably reach out to the finance guys in my team, speak to them, and see how that goes.
Yeah, I'll chat to that. I mean, otherwise just YouTube. Like I taught myself around VC cap tables just on YouTube about 15 years ago now. But yeah, back in the day of like how venture investing works and like all those different terms. And every time I came across a term, I just used to have a sheet where I just keep the terms in a backlog. And every now and like once a week, I would sit down and just start Googling the terms until I knew what it was. And then I'd Google the next term until I knew I had a pretty good understanding of what it was. And then every now and then I'd go back up to previous terms and just check that I still knew the understanding. So like it's just about learning and reaching out and following up. But most of the information is online. I don't have a single Bible for you, unfortunately.
Right. Thanks so much, Roger.
So just to add to what he has said, if you go to like product school websites, on the page there's like a place for like, I think like a glossary or something like that has all these terms and the definitions, like, or concepts around them. Yeah, that will also help. So guys, any more questions, please?
Anyone want an explanation of one of those terms? Ops team, yeah.
Hi, Roger. It's actually not a follow-up of that question. It's a different question.
Sure.
So I want to ask, how do you sort of, for a product that I would say that was free, how do you sort of introduce pricing to it? So let me give a background. We have this product. It's actually a virtual account feature where we're trying to like put pricing on it instead of saying no transfer fee, something like that. However, we've been facing like resistance from especially the sales team. They sort of refuse to push the product just because we're now charging, and as a company we have to make revenue, and these are ways that we can make revenue. So we've been trying in product team to get buy-in of sales team, get them to like push the product out to customers. But because I feel like their customers are already used to having the product free, no service charge and all that, we're not getting the expected results that we want. So how do we what's your advice on navigating that scenario?
Yeah, so it's very, very difficult to start charging someone for something that they've been getting for free if you didn't set up the expectation that this was a limited trial. It's almost impossible. Those people are more likely to churn. And sometimes you actually want them to churn because they're costing you money, they're not making any revenue, you're better off without them. If you can find, as long as you have other customers that actually are paying you, there's a caveat there. But so thinking about pricing, pricing is typically a ring fence around value. So if you think about how do people get value and what do people get value from, and what distinguishes people between getting a small amount of value versus a lot of value. And so when you start looking through that value lens, you can normally start identifying, like, where would we ring fence this? So for all the current users, so you have two options. The one is to say, we're now limiting the free trial to only 2 weeks. All existing users can carry on using it for free. Anyone new signing up, now there's only 2 weeks free, and then you move to a paid account. Or you look at all of these free people. Out of all these free people, there's this little segment gets a ton of value when they use this set of features. And so then you can say, well, let's offer all of these features for free, and this is the feature that we'll then charge for. And then you ring fence that feature as to say, well, to use this, then you need to pay. So you'll see this a ton with freemium models, where there'll be like a free website builder, but if you want to put it on your own domain, then you have to pay. Or there's like one threshold that, like, for you to get more value, you can see the value of all the features, but this one feature is the most valuable for when people really want to use it. And that will be like, if you look at number of boards, or inviting more than one user, or whatever that one unit is that distinguishes between people who get a ton of value versus people who just get some value. And that's typically where you want to put the paywall or put the payment gateway. So transitioning current free users to exactly the same product that's just paid for is near impossible. But so can you launch a new feature? Can you add something and say, okay, cool, you can keep using what you're using for free, but if you want this new feature, then you have to pay? Or can you just say, look, you're always going to be free, we'll just write you off, eventually try and grandfather you up into paid accounts. But for any new user, that free period is going to be capped to 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever it is. So that's typically how I think about it, of looking at like shifting from freemium. But you can't expect them to start paying for something they've been getting for free without a fundamental change in value. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I think Figma did something like that.
Yeah, Figma, Canva, like all those SaaS models, Evernote.
Figma was free. So when they started giving us multiple projects and design systems and plugins, you have to pay. Collaboration, you have to pay. Online meeting, you have to pay. And started paying.
Yeah, because the people who want extra value, you're willing to pay for it. And the people who don't want that extra value aren't willing to pay for it. So keep giving it to them for free. So yeah. Cool. I think that's us for tonight. I will hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you so much, Roger. So please, in appreciation, guys, let's just like, okay, so I think, Samuel, do you have something to say? Toby?
No, I have nothing to say. I was trying to clap.
Okay. So please, guys, just like clap for Roger in appreciation to this wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roger. So on a lighter note, before I move on, Samuel Ekwe, you literally dragged all the PMs here and called us glorified Scrum Masters. I would always remember that. Moving on.
He's not wrong.
Except the PMs in people in products. People here, we do value and viability. Thank you. So yeah, moving on.